Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys football for the first time in a very long time. The Florida Gators commitment sweatshirt comes back out. Three-star defensive lineman Jamir Perez committing to Florida. Now, right off the top, I would encourage Florida fans to just ignore the three-star ranking on this kid for just a second. And let's look at the bigger picture, you might say, in the 2026 cycle. And that is there are just not that many of these type of bodies in the 2026 cycle. This is personally, at least in my opinion, the thinnest and arguably weakest interior defensive line cycle that we've seen in a very long time, specifically in the southeast of the United States. So Florida having the opportunity and the ability to go up into the state of Ohio and land one of the bigger bodies that we see in the 2026 cycle, I think is a massive win for Florida. Now, I think Jamir Perez has some big time potential that we probably don't see as a high school prospect right now. But the thing that stands out to me is here, Florida going up into the state of Ohio and landing Jamir Perez. But at the same time, they are probably leading for two of the better interior defensive linemen in the southeast of the United States as well. There are a lot of teams that are looking for big bodies in the 2026 cycle. And as we sit right now, Florida has one committed, and they are trending for a few as well that we're going to talk about in the back half of this episode. Really big get. A guy that I think has the opportunity to really outplay his three-star ranking, and a guy that just there's not that many of these dudes in the 2026 cycle. I'm ignoring the three-star ranking, and if I'm a Florida fan, I'm fired up about this commitment, and you're kind of hoping this kind of sparks a little bit of a fire for Florida in the summer, building this 2026 cycle out. Now, before we get into Jamir Perez, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Florida fans. I really do think it's going to be a very fun next couple of weeks and months on the recruiting trail. Many of y'all have been rocking with the boys for the last couple of years as we've covered this program on the trail. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Now, again, one of the other things that I love about this body is these bodies you got to get at the high school ranks because they are so difficult to address in the portal. I mean, you look at all the teams that are needy every single year for big bodies in the middle of the defensive line. You don't want to put yourself in a spot where you have to go out and pay a ton of money for a guy that's going to be with your program for 8 to 6 months. You want to make sure you're getting these guys out of the high school ranks. Getting into JJ Perez from the state of Ohio, a guy that Ohio State has watched a lot of, has offered, I think was pretty high on their board in this 2026 cycle. 6'4", 360, probably needs to work on the body composition just a little bit, kind of get that weight maybe closer to 330. Pretty, kind of like how we talked about with Stephon Shivers, like there is some athleticism that's there with this big body. Now, I think you're bringing a guy like JJ Perez to be that nose presence in the middle of that defensive line. I don't think he's going to be a guy that goes for 10 sacks and 15 tackles for a loss, but I think he's going to do the dirty work and eat up some double teams and be a presence in the run game. And I think what excites me the most is what's that pass rush upside going to look like over the next couple of years as he comes to Florida? Because I think one thing Billy Napier's gotten right, and look, I have at times been very critical of Billy Napier in his tenure at Florida. I think he has crushed the defensive line hire with Coach Chapman, and I think he has the opportunity to get the best out of this kid and really create a guy with some high upside over the next couple of years. Again, really impressive feet, impressive athleticism, probably needs to work on the pad level a little bit when you kind of dive into some of the high school film. Developmental upside, rare body in the 2026 cycle. I think there's a lot to be excited about with Jamir Perez in the 2026 cycle. Now you look at Florida in the 2026 class. This is their second commitment. So obviously Florida has a lot of work to do in the 2026 cycle, but I mean, just take a look at the visit weekends that we are going to see Florida host over the next couple of weeks. It's loaded. There's some of the best players from across the country making their way to Gainesville over the next couple of weeks. I want to start with what I think is some of the defensive linemen that Florida's trending for, like Valden Stone. This is one that Florida is pretty comfortably, it sounds like, leading for 6'3", 315. He carries. I mean, JJ Perez probably has some bad weight that he has to shed. They ain't any bad weight on Valden Stone. Now, he's a little bit more of a developmental prospect, kind of like Joseph Mabachu was in the 2025 cycle. He's a reclass guy from 2027 to 2026. He was born and raised in Europe, grew up playing soccer and doing jiu-jitsu. So he's new to the sport. He is the exact body type that you are looking for in the SEC on the defensive line. He's got some length. He has some really nice size, but again, he wears that size extremely well. Probably won't be a year one guy. Year two, year three, there is legitimate high-end NFL draft potential with a guy like Valden Stone. And again, one of the best big body defensive linemen that we see in this 2026 cycle, he's trending to Florida. And what I mean by defensive lineman, you see a bunch of, defensive linemen that I like, or, quote unquote defensive linemen that are kind of listed around 6'3", 250. And it's kind of hard to see them getting up and playing 3-tech in the SEC. Probably going to stay out on the edge. Florida's trending for the legit bodies in the middle of the defensive line. Valden Stone being one of them. Well, Rodney Cleveland from the state of Alabama, 6'3", 305. Another one of probably the more impressive interior defensive line body types that we see in 2026. Like, as we sit in the middle of May, Florida trending for Rodney Cleveland. And you go to Kendall Gerville from Fort Myers, like another body that Florida is trending for. Like Rodney Cleveland and Kendall, they're probably the two best interior defensive linemen that you see in the 2026 cycle in the Southeast United States. And Florida seems to be trending for them both. It's one of those situations where not only does Florida get to add a couple of really quality bodies on your defensive line, but you're also keeping them away from teams like Alabama and teams like Georgia as well, which is certainly something that Florida wants to get done. You talk about the official visit weekend, like a lot of really good football players. Let's start with Felix Ojo, who was on campus. This was, I think a recruitment that Florida is probably still not the front runner for. There's a lot of work to do to kind of get past Texas with this recruitment. I think Florida's put themselves in a really good spot to contend for Felix Ojo, who is a very impressive offensive tackle prospect that needs to fill out the frame a little bit, but the length and athleticism are real for this kid. We said it, I believe, Friday morning, and I'll probably say it again right now. It's not ideal that Florida only has 2 commitments in the 2026 cycle as we speak. This is a team that I think can catch fire over the next couple of months. I think the thing that they're selling the most is this program turning the corner. Like a team that we think can contend for an SEC championship, a team that we think can contend with the college football playoffs, a team that I think will put out 10-plus NFL draft picks after this year. They're checking the boxes. Like, we know Florida's competitive with NIL. Development, competing for championships, those were the 2 things that were kind of lagging behind for Florida during the start of Billy Napier's tenure. I think that's all coming together for Florida. Wouldn't be surprised if this commitment sweatshirt does not go anywhere for long. We'll close it out there. Really big get for Jamir Perez. At the very least, just grabbing a body that's not really readily available in this 2026 cycle. Big win. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.